Okay, so this is a lesson that I left when I was gone in December. I broke my leg a year ago and have had a bunch of issues and been gone for quite a bit of time from school. So I was gone for the whole month of December, and for that whole month I created smartboard lessons and recorded videos so that my students still could hear my teaching that they were used to, and the flow of how the notes went, the vocabulary, those kind of things that the sub normally wouldn't have probably known to do. So I made lessons in Smartboard and then recorded videos using Screencast-O-Matic. And then I put them in a shared drive that the sub could get to, and he could open them up and play them. So he could hear the lesson as well, and that would help him be able to help the students with the activity for that day after notes were given. So this is just a video showing what the sub would do, and also it will show the recording that I made for the students. So this is the Smartboard file that I have every single day for every single lesson. Gives your objectives and topics, all that good stuff. And then this particular one was on a Monday, so they are to write this down into their agendas. They copy it down so they know what their homework and what the lessons are. And it's on a timer so that it doesn't take more than 5 minutes of class time, which I explained to the sub, and I think, from what I understand, he actually followed that, so that was nice to have, and the kids are used to it. We've done it since day one of class, so they're used to having this timer going up there. And also, it takes care of knowing what the kids need for that day. So that's how every day would start. And then, I don't typically put this in when I'm teaching, but for him, I wanted to make sure that everything got done for the day. So this is, you know, the list of things that need to get done, and so the kids and the sub would know what to expect that day. And then here's where the video would start. For this particular unit, I actually made packets, like weekly packets that had notes and work time in them, so they kept that whole packet till the end of the week and they turned them in, and then I graded them from home. So he would get to this point and then play the video file, which is me giving the lesson, basically.
Okay, so today's lesson is going to be on inequalities. And inequalities are very similar to all the equations we've been doing. You're just going to use this greater than, less than, greater than equal to, or less than or equal to for in place of your equal sign. Okay? So, first of all, definition. Inequality states that two quantities are not equal or may not be equal. So they're going to be either greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. That's all that means. Okay? Alright, so this box right here is going to help you to write an equation if you're given words. For example, there are at least 25 students in the auditorium. Okay, so your keyword here is going to be at least. Okay? So if there's at least 25 students, I always go through and I say, okay, if there's at least 25, does that mean there can be 26? Yes. Or I say, if there's 24, does that fit? So if there's 24, is that at least 25? No. Okay, so your numbers have to be bigger than 25. Okay, so your students have to be at least, so it could be at least, it could be 25, so we put the equal there, equal to. So x is greater than or equal to 25. So the number of students has to be greater than or equal to 25. And remember, the line underneath the greater than sign means equal to. It can include this number. Okay? Alright, next one. No more than 150 people can occupy the room. So no more than. Oh, look, no more than, right there. Okay? So, x has to be less than or equal to 150. And I would go ahead and check that. So if x is less than or equal to 150, can it be 140? So no more than 150 can occupy the room. So can 140 occupy the room? Yes, it's true. Okay, so this equation works. Or inequality, not equation, sorry. Okay, next. An algebraic inequality is an inequality that contains a variable. Okay, so basically, when we put these x's or a's or b's or whatever variable you're given, it becomes an algebraic inequality. And then a solution set is one or more solutions to an inequality. Okay, so we're going to solve some inequalities and then we're going to graph them. And what you get is a solution set. It's basically your answer. Alright? So in a solution set, we can, if we have the greater than or equal to sign, the greater than or less than sign, you're going to have an open circle. Okay? So that's for greater than or less than. And also, if it's a closed circle, it's going to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Okay? Those are very important to remember. And one other thing I want to point out is if you're given an inequality where the number is written first instead of the letter, we need to flip it around so the letter's written first. That way you can read it from left to right. So we can say A is greater than 5, or B is less than or equal to 3. And here it's a little bit harder. So when we get to this problem, we're going to want to switch that around so the Y comes first. And then that also opens up the door for when you graph. As you notice, this arrow is pointing to the right. So that means you shade to the right. Okay, and this one down here, you notice the arrow is pointing to the left. That means you shade to the left. Okay, very important to keep that in mind. That has to be written, your variable, your sign, and then your number. Okay, so let's do a couple to practice. So x is what? The negative 2. You got to figure out what that symbol is, and hopefully you all said greater than. Okay, so x is greater than negative 2. So we need to graph this. Okay, and with this greater than sign, we need to determine if our circle is open or closed. And we said up here it would be open if there's no equal to underneath. So we're going to put an open circle at negative 2. And then we're going to graph the numbers that are greater than negative 2. Or if you look at your arrow, it's pointing to the right. So you're going to graph everything to the right. So you just shade it in and then draw an arrow. And I need to make sure I can tell this is an open circle. If you would rather put your open circle here and then your line like that, I'm okay with that too. Okay, next one. Negative 1, and I have greater than or equal to y. First of all, we need to write this so the y is first. So we're going to switch everything around. So y, and then that means we need to see how the arrow is currently pointing to the y? It has to stay pointing to the y. Okay, so flip it, and then negative 1. So y is less than or equal to negative 1. Okay, so we're graphing the point negative 1. And then you need to determine if it's an open circle or a closed circle. And it is less than or equal to, and remember when it has the equal to, it is a closed circle. So you're going to put a closed circle at negative 1. And then look at your arrow, it's pointing left, or it's less than, so you're going to shade everything to the left. Okay. And again, you could do your closed-in dot like that if you don't want to shade it on the line. Either way. Okay. Now, go ahead and flip your page over to the back side of your notes. Now we're going to graph compound inequalities, which is basically two inequalities, okay? We're going to say a number is either greater than 3 or less than -1, okay? Or we can say it is greater than -2 and less than 4, so it's between -2 and 4. Okay, so we're just combining two. That's all we're doing right here. Okay, so when we're given these compound inequalities, there's a couple things we need to do. We need to graph them separately, and then we'll graph it together. Okay, and I want you to notice that when it says or, you're going to have arrows in opposite ways. So underline that word or and put arrows opposite ways, and I'll explain in a minute. Okay, and then if you have the word and, you're going to have an overlap. Okay, it's going to be between 2 points. Okay, so it says to graph each compound inequality. So we have x is greater than or equal to 0, or x is less than -3. Okay, because there's an or here, I know that I'm going to have arrows pointing in opposite ways when I'm finished. Okay, so that gives us an idea of what our answer should look like in the end. Okay, so we're going to graph the first one. So we have x is greater than or equal to 0. Go ahead and number your number lines. Okay, so 0, I'll give you a second, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Okay, x is greater than or equal to 0. Well, we're going to graph 0, then we need to determine if it's an open or a closed circle. And because it has the line underneath for the equal to, that means it's going to be a closed circle. So put a closed circle at 0. Okay, and it's greater than, or as you see, your arrow is pointing right, so you're going to graph to the right. Okay? And then you're ready to do the next one, so you have x is less than -3. Okay, we're graphing -3. And it's a less than sign with no equal to, so that means it's an open circle. And then if it's less than, or if you notice, the arrow is pointing to the left, so we need to shade and draw our arrow to the left. Once you're done with that, go ahead and get your bottom number line labeled. This is where we're going to graph both of them. And remember, our final product is going to have arrows pointing in opposite ways. So let's graph this first one. So I had a closed circle at 0, and then we pointed right. And then I had an open circle at -3. And we pointed left. Okay, and that's it. So we graphed a compound inequality. Our arrows are pointing opposite ways because we had an or statement, so we're good to go. Okay, let's do this last one here. So this one has nothing, it doesn't have an or, so that means it's an and statement. Okay, so we need to separate this out into two different statements. So the first one is 1 less than p, which if we write in the order that we like it, we need to flip it around. So p greater than 1. That's the first part. And then we also have p is less than or equal to 5. So those are our two statements. number your graphs. Give you just a little bit longer to get your graphs labeled. Okay, let's go ahead and graph them. I think I'll change pen colors. That might be easier for you guys to see. Alright, so P greater than 1. So we're graphing 1. So we now need to figure out if it's an open circle or a closed circle there. And because there's not a line under it for the equal to, it's going to be an open circle. And if it's P is greater than, so the numbers are bigger than 1, or as you notice, the arrow is pointing to the right. So go ahead and draw your line with your arrow. Okay, then the next part we have P is less than or equal to 5. So we're graphing 5, and as you notice, the left-hand sign has a line underneath it for an equal to. So go ahead and draw your circle, and it's going to be closed in because it has a line underneath it. And as you notice, the arrow is pointing left, so we need to shade to the left. And now we need to combine these two. So I'm going to first put my dots. So I have an open circle at 1, and I have a closed circle at 5. And then remember, we shaded to the right of 1 and to the left of 5. So the right of 1 and the left of 5. So it's anything in between. You remember, with an and statement, we're going to have overlap and something shaded in between two numbers. Alright, so that is inequalities.
Okay, so after they would watch the video, then I left all of my notes, and I used a Mobi or an airliner. We have a CPS brand of Mobi at our school. All the math teachers do. That came with clickers, so I used that to teach from so I could be up and around in my room rather than standing at the smartboard writing on it. So I left everything on the board so they could refer back to it if they needed to. And then after that, I gave them what the assignment was, so they knew what they were doing. And depending on the day, most of the days, the exit ticket was not done, but it's there so that they could answer those questions so I knew what they knew and what they didn't know from that day's lesson. So having all this put together for the sub, I think it made it a lot easier on the sub, and I didn't feel so bad that my students weren't getting quality instruction while I was gone for so long. So that is one way that I have done technology in my classroom while a sub is there. So